Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about financial pain. I think it's something, especially after the COVID, there's so many people will be going through this pain. It happens, you could be going to have a chronic illness, going through a divorce, lost your job, you name it. There's a chance so many people, you might be a part of it. You might be going through financial pain. This episode is for you. Our guest, Dr. Lakisha Simmons, went through financial pain after her divorce. She'll be telling us about the challenges that presented, the how she decided to turn her life around to be able to raise more than 950,000 US dollar in her account, in savings, investment, and cash. That's a miracle story. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Lakisha L. Simmons is a first-generation college student. She's a professor of analytical and financial independence. She holds a bachelor degree in business information system and an MBA from University of Phoenix. She also has a doctor of psychology degree in management information system from University of Mississippi. She holds a Six Sigma black belt that was achieved at Caterpillar Inc. As a professor, she's written over 40 peer-reviewed scholar work. She's been awarded the Rising Star Award by Cable 40 Under 40 by Nashville Business Journal. She's received numerous other awards. As the CEO of Brave Consulting, she's on a mission to help people attain financial security, reach financial independence, and enjoy all the experiences life has to offer. She's not from a wealthy family, but she's managed to be able to turn her own life around for her own future generation. She's also passionate about mentoring and helping girls through her period projects, working under the non-profit she founded. Let's meet Dr. Lakisha Simmons as we talk about financial pain and finding your joy. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Financial pain is something that we all know about. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've been through. We all go through it one way or the other. If you have chronic illness, you're going through a divorce, or you've lost your job, you will have experienced financial pain. My guest, Lakisha Simmons, Dr. Lakisha Simmons, will be telling us about her own journey and why she became financially disciplined, and not just for herself, but started this too to help others. Lakisha, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share with you today.
I'm really blown away by your story. I mean, so many people are not quite open about talking about financial pain. I think this is why it keeps getting worse. It's like you go through it and you think you're all alone and you don't want the world to know that you're struggling, that you're having this bad day, you're having this bad experience. But you were very open about your story, which is something we'll get to. Before we get into all of that, where are you joining us from, and who is Dr. Lakisha Simmons?
I am joining you today from Nashville, Tennessee in the United States. So far away from you, but I feel like you're my sister. So I'm so glad to have this conversation with you today. You know, I am just a young, at heart woman who grew up in a very humble background. So my mother had me at just 17 years old in Indianapolis, Indiana. And life was really tough for us growing up. We had love. We had plenty of love and not a whole lot else. And so when I think about my upbringing, even though we didn't have much and everyone in my family worked multiple jobs, the thing I remember most is that we all cared for each other and we had love, and you just didn't even know what you didn't have because you always had cousins and aunties and uncles and a whole community of family around. And so that's really how I grew up. So when I went to college and I was able to graduate with a bachelor's in information systems. And then I went on to get my MBA degree and eventually decided to pursue the PhD. And so I have a doctorate of philosophy in business and specialized in technology. So even though I have all these accolades now, I still remember being that young girl where love was enough. And it wasn't about what we had or what we didn't have, but it was about each other and thriving together and loving each other. And so that has really carried me through my life. And so when people talk about my financial independence journey and now basically being a millionaire, they say, well, gosh, you don't seem like what we would think a millionaire would be. And that's because of my upbringing, of who I am on the inside.
Well, that's really fascinating because in your journey, you said in your background, you say you bounced around schools, lived with raised by multiple family members, which you've just described. So sometimes we felt, unknown, helpless as a kid because obviously you're moving around, but there was a little bit of trauma of all that moving around, but that sometimes gave you hope. So as a child, how did you balance all of that? You know, because I live with my own family, and I understand the benefit of family, but at the same time, they could have their own challenges. How did that give you hope when you were moved around as a kid and you still found your joy?
Yes. So I'll tell you, it was very difficult. As a child, I was depressed. And of course, as a child, I didn't know that's what it was called. But I remember crying myself to sleep most nights. And I had one prayer each night. I would pray to God and I would say, God, one day I just really want to be happy and I want to be able to take care of myself. That was my prayer night after night after night. And since, my mother had me young, she dropped out of high school. My father did graduate high school and he went into the military, went into the Marines to try to make a better life for us. So I didn't really see a lot of people going to college. I went to, a high school where many people didn't go to college. And so that wasn't really just impressed upon us really heavily. My family wanted that for me, but I didn't see a lot of examples of it. So it made it hard. But I went on a college tour. Okay. And so this is where the hope comes in because I went on this college tour and it changed my entire perception of life. I was exposed to something that I had never seen before. I was on a college campus. I could see the students walking with purpose with their backpacks and they were on the move and they seemed like leaders. I mean, they just looked different from the students I was used to seeing in my high school, just totally different. And I thought, wow, I'm seeing something and I want to be that. I want to feel the way they feel. And that gave me hope. And so even though I had so much going on in my personal life, by that time my mom had moved on. Obviously I wasn't with my mom or my dad, and I was with different family members kind of moving around, and that was hard. But then I had this hope of going to college because I felt like that was going to change my entire life, and it did.
That is amazing. I jump now to your financial situation. Before you became all of this, you had your own trauma. Your situation changed dramatically in 2017. After going through a divorce, you were left with two kids under 10, and you didn't want to move your kids from their own five-bedroom home. You said, I want these kids to stay here. I know I'm going through divorce, which is a very hard thing to do because most people tend to sell a house and share the equity and share whatever income they get out of it. And also, when you're going through divorce, especially with kids, you probably found it difficult because you probably never really managed the financial, like when a divorce friend hits you, you're like, oh my goodness, these are the bills I have to now take care of. I'm now taking ownership of things that I've never had to do. Could you explain why that 2017 was an eye opener and why it was so painful for you?
Absolutely. Wow. It was like a bomb went off in 2017 and everything was disrupted in my life and for my children. As a mom, you want to protect your children and your nieces, and you just want to protect them and you want them to have the most joyous childhood. And so I had a lot of guilt around the divorce. And you're right. Initially, I wanted to stay in the home because I didn't want to uproot them. But once those bills were all on my plate along a single income, I realized it just wasn't the smartest thing to do, because it was bringing back that financial insecurity that I had as a child, right? Of being moved around, being unstable, not having money, having love, but not having money. Because remember, at this point in 2017, I have all of my degrees. I'm a professor, I'm a tenured professor, right? So at that point, I was doing pretty good. And with two incomes, we were doing great. But it wasn't sustainable on the one income. Even though I could pay the bills, I wasn't getting behind, but I wasn't able to save anything. I was basically living paycheck to paycheck. And that just didn't sit well for me. I couldn't save for the children's education. I wasn't really saving enough for my own retirement. And I just knew that I didn't want that financial insecurity anymore. So I had to make some decisions. And I did make the decision to sell the house. Now, we had only been in the house for just under 2 years, So there wasn't a lot of equity to get out of the house. But luckily, I netted somewhere between 30 and 35K. And so when I got that lump sum of money, I said, well, what can I do with this money to help me get on a better financial path? And that's where this whole financial independence journey began, with that lump sum of money.
How did you shift your mindset, knowing that, okay, I'm now divorced, I have my kids, which I will also have to look after. How did you shift your mindset and develop the guilt and the hustle in you to really go out there and say, I have to do this, but I have to start with my own self. I have to shift my financial dependence, becoming really financial independent and make a difference. How did you do that?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I would say the wake up call came when I got that lump sum of money, and I said, what can I do with it? It gave me a chance to say, and $30,000, that's a salary for a whole year for some people, but we don't typically get a $30,000 lump sum at one time. And so that was a big deal for me, because it was like, wow, this 30,000, what should I need to make a wise decision with it, right? As a single mom, I need to be really smart about it. So I started doing some research. At the time, I had a financial planner. Here's what I was being dependent, because I called the financial planner and said, oh, what should I do with this money? And of course, he said, well, send it to me and I'll invest it for you. And I thought, well, okay, but I really want to take more ownership now. I really need to be more responsible. Let me know, what are you going to do with it? I want to know. Oh, well, we can talk about that after you send the money. So just go ahead and send the money. That was on a Friday afternoon. So he sent me the paperwork and I was getting everything ready. And that weekend, I sat down on the computer and I said, what would you do if you had a lump sum of money? I Googled it. And I Googled that, and I Googled, how to become financially independent. What is financial freedom? I just started, like, it was almost spiritual that God was laying these things on my mind to ask, just questions I never asked before. And that's where my mindset is, just everything fed into me at that time. And I was getting all the answers. I have to thank Google because all the answers were coming to me. And I learned about something called financial independence, retire early, FIRE. And I thought, oh my gosh, FIRE, what is this? And I just read everything I could, every blog, every article, everything I could find about the FIRE movement. And I said, thank you, God. This is the answer that I have been looking for. I didn't even know what I was looking for, and I found it. And that changed my entire mindset, because the whole concept of FIRE is living a humble life, not spending everything that's coming in, right? Investing your money. I had never invested in a stock market. I had retirement accounts. Most of us have some type of workplace retirement account. I wasn't maxing it out. I didn't even know what the max was. I just knew I was putting maybe 5% a month in there. But when I learned about FIRE, and they said you'll never retire on 5% a month, but you can, not only that, you can retire much sooner if you decide to live on half of what you make. And I thought, could I live on half of what I make? And Lady Ann, that's when I decided I've got to sell the house. If I take this lump sum and invest it, sell the house, move into something more manageable. A single mom with two boys doesn't need a five. I personally didn't need a 5-bedroom house.
Oh, you
I
don't.
didn't need it.
No, no.
Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely
it
not.
was just like, wow, I'm throwing away so much money. Personally, that's how I felt. Now, everybody has their own opinions about it. This is what worked for me in my situation. And I just threw out all of that, everything that you hear about, oh, buy the house, buy the house, buy the house. And I thought, this house is sucking me dry. I have no money to do anything else with. It's just not a good decision for me. And so I sold the house. I changed my mindset about when I buy things, do I really need it? Is it helping me get to my financial independence goal? And I just learned about the stock market, and I learned about investing and wise investments to make. And that's that was my focus. And I still had the greatest experiences with the boys, because remember, when I was growing up, it was about love, and it was about experiences and backyard picnics and backyard cookouts. And that's what we went back to. It wasn't going out to eat all the time and just going to Target and just buy new toys. And because I just didn't have it like that. Now, if you have it like that, that's great, but I didn't have it financially like that. And so we went back to the basics, and that's still my mindset to this day.
It is truly amazing, because you went on to raise in 4 years, you went on to raise 750,000 US dollars. Most people can't do that. They can't get that financial discipline to just grin and bear and say, look, I want to get to this goal. Gosh,
Well, and not only that, I don't know that I even told you, but as of May 31st, I retired.
oh my.
So the article you read may have been from early this year, but the stock market has been doing amazing this year, and I was still investing heavily, and so I have surpassed 100,000 more than that. So I'm well over almost 900K in the stock market. Of course, I have cash. Everyone should seek their own professional advice around this, because you need to understand allocation, and you need to understand how much cash you need versus how many bonds you need versus how much you have in equities. So when things do happen, you're not, so you want to make sure that you understand all that. It's not just put some money in the stock market. You don't know what you're doing. You want to be educated about it. And that's what I do. I do educate. Do have some financial literacy tools on my website. But I say all that to say that getting a game plan and sticking to it is so key. It's so key in life. But yeah, I'm retired, and so I am enjoying breathing in the children.
Absolutely, watching them grow up, and they can also now enjoy that. They started and they're now enjoying money and into the fullest belt. And I think it's just crazy. But when you give advice, because you give advice from your heart, you've experienced it. I always love listen to people who've experienced something, because when they give advice, they're not telling you because they heard from someone. I don't believe so much in hearsay. I like to hear from you. How can you share steps that you've took to reach this goal of where you are today? I know you've talked very openly about how you decided to sit back, but what if you say in step one, what are the key things that you said that you did that really changed your life in reaching your goal?
Absolutely. So there are very tactical things you can do, but there are mindset things, as you mentioned, and I just don't think that many people take the mindset seriously. There's a power that we have within us, and I know it sounds like, oh my goodness, here she goes with this, but it's so true. The power of the mind, the power of the spirit, the power of believing in yourself and believing in something is just hands down amazing. And so the first thing I would say for someone is to really sit down and assess, what do you value? For me, growing up early, I realized that we valued family time, experiences together, just laughing. We enjoy worshiping together. We enjoy singing and laughing and dancing. And when I sit down and I think about what I value, it wasn't things. It wasn't 5-bedroom house wasn't something that was on the list of my values. That's something nice to have. And that is great. One day, who knows? I may have that again, right? I'm remarried, so we have 3 boys now, so who knows? But I have to start with my values. And so for me, right now, we have a townhouse that is perfect for us. It's 3 bedrooms, but it allows us to really travel the world. We're traveling almost every week because that's what we love to do, to spend time with together. The boy, we're actually on a trip now with our 3 boys, and they love it. And because we're spending time together. So I would really recommend everyone sit down and think, what is it that I value? And then so on the tactical side, right, steps to reach this, number one, hands down, is you have to live by budget, which is telling your money what you want it to do. So when I was all alone in 2017 and I was looking at those bills and I was looking at those numbers, I was so dissatisfied. Electric bill was, or energy bill, $330 a month. It just made me sick to the stomach just to know I had to pay that. and yeah, I need energy, but my goodness, do I have to pay so much? But it's because I'm in a 5-bedroom house. And so I realized that I've got to cut the expenses. That just didn't make sense to me. So I was able to go line by line in my budget to cut. I switched my phone carrier from one of the big brand carriers to one that's a prepaid that works just great. So I only pay $180 for the entire year versus I was paying close to $100 a month US. So even just changes like that, you just never know. You might think, oh, my cable bill or my satellite bill, oh, that's just $100 US a month or 150. But if you look at it in terms of the whole year, and if you are happy paying $1,400, $1,500 a year, then great. But if you're like, oh, that's kind of a lot of money to spend on that, look for an alternative because there likely is one. So I would say the budget. The second thing would be your workplace retirement accounts. In the United States, we have traditional IRAs and we have Roth IRAs. So we have options and choices. And most people have no clue what the maximum amount is that they can invest. Well, guess what? I found that out. I wanted to know what's the max I can invest. And I worked my way up to the max because most of those accounts, there was no tax drag for me. So I could invest tax-free or tax delayed, I'll say. And so then now that I'm retired, once I start taking the money out, I'll get taxed, but I'm using less money than I did when I was working. So my taxes are less. So it just all works out in the end. So I would really encourage everyone, what is it that your workplace offers, and how could you use that to really make your money multiply? Because that's exactly what I did.
When you were making mistakes during the financial process, was there any mistake particularly you made that you really think, oh my goodness, if I had known this earlier, I would have not gone that route? Oh, not really.
Yeah, I would say I probably jumped the gun too quickly when it came to buying a house because I was going by what society says I should do: get married, buy a house, have kids, and do it all really quickly, right? And I think if I had to think back, I would have put some other priorities in place first, right? I would have made sure that I was investing for the rainy day early before having children, right? Before buying a big house, I would have made sure I had a really good down payment on it and maybe would have been able to get maybe a 15-year loan versus a 30-year loan. There's certain things that I think society tells us that we should do, and this is the right way to do it. But if we just took a minute and stopped to think what really works best for me, that may be a little bit different than what society says. And I think that would have had me in a better position in 2017.
I think that makes a lot of people. We always feel that this is the direction we need to go because everyone is doing it. Society has said this is the norm. But sometimes I always say to people, the norm never works for everyone. You must have to identify yourself and see if that works for you, if that is the right path for you. Not because someone else is doing it, not because it worked well for someone to get married, have kids, and go through this path worked well for them. Doesn't mean it will do the same. one thing I really am fascinated about yourself is that you have an impressive academic background. You have a doctorate in, you have, in psychology and management, I think, it's philosophy and
Mhm.
management, information from University of Mississippi. And you have made you've made so many sacrifices to get yourself on this ladder of being successful in America. You hear so many Black women are always struggling because they always scared of that process of getting on this ladder, because either they don't have the financial backing to go on to go the degree. But you've really shown that this can be done. What were some of your challenges to get on this ladder to go to university, and what encouragement would you give to other Black women who really want to continue on the degree, but when they think of the financial burden, they just like, okay, I can't do this.
Oh, yes. I did have some student loans from my undergraduate degree, and but I still worked. I only took absolutely what I needed. And so I think that helped me. So when people are thinking about going back to college or going for an advanced degree and they're thinking about that financial burden, I do think it's a serious conversation to have with yourself in terms of how you're going to pay for it, because I know people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and they feel terrible about it. They're always thinking about it's a stress. And so what worked for me, what I found out is that there are opportunities for full scholarships. Okay. A lot of the research universities here in the United States will allow you to go tuition free, believe it or not, but you have to go full time. And that's the part that gets a lot of women, because they say, well, I'm not going to have much money. But for me, that was okay because I was used to growing up that way. And so I think the short-term sacrifice, so the 4 years that I was basically living on beans and rice, really set me up with the career that I loved. I loved teaching. I was very fulfilled, and it had a pretty good salary to it. I mean, I'm still a teacher, so I was in no way making, I have a PhD, but I wasn't a medical doctor, so I wasn't making all that high salary. But I had a really good salary. And so I would say that may seem like a challenge, but there's always a way. Don't let anything deter your dreams. If that's a dream you had, I wanted that for myself, for my mom. My mom had me, she had to drop out of school. And the fact that I can help her as much as I can. When COVID hit, I took her off work. I said, no, you're not working for several months. I'm just going to pay you to not work. And that felt so good to be able to do that for my mom. So I would encourage all the women out there, if that's your burning passion, do it. But while you're doing it, I want you to think about financial independence, because at some point, like me, right, I went and I got all this education and now I'm retired at 41. So I was a professor for exactly 10 years, exactly 10 years. And so think about what you really want in the long run and where you really want to be, and let that drive your decisions.
You always say something about on your website. You say you talk passionately about showing our money who is the boss.
Yes.
You're very passionate about that. What do you mean by that? How do we show our money who is the boss?
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up, because I'm like, does anybody even read this stuff that I write on here
Yeah, see,
on my blog? Does anyone actually read it? Yeah, so that's so awesome. I say show your money who's the boss, because if you don't, your money will run you and you'll end up in debt. You'll end up working paycheck to paycheck. You'll end up being a slave to your job. And that's not what you want. I showed my money who's boss, and now I'm retired at 41 because I tell my money what it's going to do. Every dollar I make needs to in return make another dollar, period. It's not I'm going to work, spend this money, and then I'm going to work more to make more money. No, in 2017, I made a decision. From now on, every dollar that I make is going to make money from me in return. That's showing your money who's boss. And the stock market was my way to go. You can do real estate. Okay. You can maybe buy you a townhouse, a full duplex or a townhouse. You live in one side and then you rent the other, and it pays for the entire mortgage, right? And then you have cash flow. That's making your money work for you. That's showing your money who's boss.
Our final question is, Lakisha, I'm so glad you took the time out to talk to me. But our final question is that every burning question is new students are going out there, and people are, not coming from, not a lot of people come from money background, and you've proven it. Someone is listening and they really are dying to know, can it really be done? I know you've done it, but can other people really change their mindset to achieve their financial goals?
You can do it if you believe you can. In 2017, when I became divorced, I said, I've got to make a change. I never want to be in this position again where I'm financially insecure. That lit a fire under me, literally. And I said, what can I do? And I got serious about it. And so, yes, I cut my expenses. I didn't eat out as much. I still traveled because that was something I valued, right? But I realized I like cooking. I'll find new recipes. I'll find new ways to eat really delicious food at home and make really great lunches for my children. I don't have to always go and buy the packaged things at the store that cost more money. So it's how, and I have never felt deprived. People ask me, oh, you cut your expenses. I was investing 60% of my income. So I was living on 40%. Sold the house, moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. It was just 3 of us. I have 2 boys. They share a room and I have a room. That was plenty, right? But society would say, oh no, you're a 10-year professor. You need to have a house. You're throwing away money if you're renting. No, that allowed me to save a tremendous amount of money and invested in something that gave me dividends. That was the smartest thing I ever did, was sell that house. So now I am a homeowner again, but this time I bought something that was more reasonable for what I valued and for my lifestyle. So yes, you can do it if you're willing to put the effort in to live on less and invest the rest. Invest it in something that is going to produce money for you in your sleep. Yes, absolutely. So yes, they can do it.
I am so glad, because I think anyone who's listening, the guys who will listen to this show, will feel that confident that they are going to make a decision. It doesn't matter if we're in July or whatever part of the month is, you could start. And you believe that as well. You could start now. You don't have to say, I'm waiting for the new year. When I have a New Year resolution, this is when I'm going to start. But for your opinion, I think anyone could start anytime, right?
Anytime. I mean, you can. So what I tell people is, let's say that you typically go get a new pair of shoes maybe once a quarter, or some people once a month. Well, maybe this month you don't go buy a new pair of Nikes, or maybe you don't go buy a new bag this month, but the money that you were going to spend on it, maybe you take that money and go buy a share of stock in that company. That's one good way to get started. Just start small. Well, maybe this month I'm going to buy 1 share of stock. Maybe my goal is each month to buy 1 more share of stock, or whatever it is that you want to invest in. But the point is to get started, because when I started in 2017 and the next year I maybe had, $100,000 more, but then the second year I had maybe $300,000 more, and then the 4th year was like 600, and it just snowballs, right? It just is. We all understand compound interest, but you never understand it until it's your bank account compounding. You're like, wow, this is really compound interest. And so, yes, get started this month, even if it's something small, saying this weekend I'm going to cook meals the whole weekend, and the money that we would have spent, I'm going to take it and go buy a share of stock at whatever company that I love.
Oh, Dr. Lakisha, I am truly amazing to spend this time with you, because you really gave us a detailed insight that anyone could do it. They could take control of their financial pain, and they become financially independent, and also retire early like you have. I think anyone who's looking for any questions should go visit your website, because you really explain it. Could you just share your website again? I think it's Dr.
Yeah, absolutely. Lakisha, Lakisha, Simmons.com. And you can find me, or if you Google it, just always Google Lakisha L. Simmons, because there is another Dr. Keisha out there with the same exact name and spelling. But I'm Dr. Lakisha Simmons, and you can find me on social media, YouTube as well, Lakisha L. Simmons, at Dr. Keisha Simmons.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.